Hello, my name is Guy Wallace, and I'd like to talk you through the management areas of performance for the leadership level of our four-level model. All of this is covered in my book, Management Areas of Performance, which is available as a free PDF on my website. More on that later. There are 6 areas of performance in the leadership level of the model. They are L1, Stakeholder Relationship Management and System Governance of the entire system that the manager has within their sphere. L2, Strategic Planning and Management. L3, Operations Planning and Management. L4, Results Measurement Planning and Management. L5, Process Improvement Planning and Management. L6, Communications Planning and Management. Let's review each of these a little more closely. Management Leadership Area of Performance, L1. Stakeholder Relationship Management and System Governance. This is relevant to you if you are involved in gathering various stakeholder inputs regarding their needs and gathering feedback on how well you are doing in meeting those needs and future needs, given the resources provided and all the other priorities faced. The typical outputs for this area of performance include the stakeholder voices, which will provide requests for products, services, and specific requirements for that stakeholder, feedback on how well you are doing or not in meeting those requirements. Stakeholders that you may need to understand include government stakeholders, providing laws and regulations that must be complied with under the threat of financial penalty or jail time for non-compliance. Owner, shareholder stakeholders, with expectations of a financial nature and or social issues and demands. Executive management stakeholders, with a fiduciary responsibility to the owners, compliance responsibilities to the governments, service responsibility to the customers, leadership responsibilities to the employees, fairness responsibilities to the suppliers, and various social responsibilities to the communities in which the businesses operate. Customer stakeholders, value for the products, services rendered in the manner in which both the customer have defined value and which the enterprise has committed to deliver. Employee stakeholders, a safe workplace and fair wages for performance and equal opportunity under the law. Industry group stakeholders, compliance with industry norms and standards as agreed to by the suppliers, customers, and perhaps government regulators. Supplier stakeholders, fairness in terms of payments for supplies delivered. Community stakeholders, various social issues and needs that may or may not find their way into the laws, regulations, and codes. Typical outputs for this area of performance include governance, decisions based on the balancing of the many stakeholder voices and clear specific directives to all other enterprise functions, systems, processes, people throughout their sphere of responsibility and accountability. Examples include marching orders for the rest of the enterprise that are long-term, medium-term, and or short-term, such as, let's not go into that market now. Let's extend the life of that product. Let's sell that business. Hire him. Fire him. Promote her. Find a new supplier or broaden or narrow our supplier base. Change or improve this process, but not that one. The typical tasks that you could be involved in for this area of performance include meeting with appropriate stakeholders, depending on your and others' levels and responsibilities, accountabilities in your enterprise. Making business decisions, either in conjunction with or collaboratively with some or all other stakeholder groups. Communicating clear, specific messages to the appropriate groups through the appropriate channels. Once you've defined performance competence for your specific situation as the task capability to produce outputs to stakeholder requirements, you can systematically derive the specific, not generic, enabling competencies and attributes. What are the compliance knowledge, marketplace knowledge, enterprise knowledge, business knowledge and skills, interpersonal knowledge and skills, and professional technical knowledge and skills required for you for this area of performance? What are the required enabling physical attributes, psychological attributes, intellectual attributes, and personal values necessary for peak performance? Next, Management Leadership Area of Performance L2, Strategic Planning and Management. This is relevant to you if you are involved in setting strategic goals and developing plans to achieve those goals. The Strategic Planning and Management Area of Performance involves development of a strategic plan based on the voices of your stakeholders and the strategic plans of all higher-level functions in your chain of command. Typical outputs for this area of performance include strategic plan inputs, summaries of all drivers for your strategic plan. Your strategic plan is an output, a multi-year plan reflecting a balance of all the drivers. Typical tasks include meeting with your appropriate stakeholders to gather their strategic plans and the implications as inputs for your strategic plan, developing your plan, and then communicating, reviewing your plan, selling as needed, and updating as necessary. Once you define performance competence here as the task capability to produce outputs to stakeholder requirements, you can systematically derive the specific and not generic enabling competencies and attributes. What are the compliance, marketplace, enterprise, business, interpersonal, and professional technical knowledge and skills required for your situation? What are the required enabling physical attributes, psychological attributes, intellectual attributes, and personal values necessary for peak performance? Next, Management Leadership Area of Performance L3, Operations Planning and Management. This is relevant to you if you are involved in developing and managing an operations or annual plan and budget to achieve the assigned year's annual goals and objectives. The Operations Planning and Management Area of Performance involves developing a plan and a budget for operations covering the year based on given goals and objectives for the year and the existing strategic plan. It should follow the format provided by the enterprise. Typical outputs include an operation plan and budget, with breakdowns by quarter and month and perhaps even week. Typical tasks. The tasks in this area of performance relate to the outputs above and typically include developing an operations plan and budget draft, reviewing the plan and budget with your management, updating the operations plan and budget per feedback received, communicating the final plan with specific messages to the appropriate groups through the appropriate channels, following the plan, monitoring other implementation, and adjusting, updating it as necessary. Once you've defined performance competence as the task capability to produce outputs to stakeholder requirements, you can systematically derive the specific, and not the generic, enabling competencies and attributes. What are the compliance, marketplace, enterprise, business, interpersonal, and professional technical knowledge and skills required to support your specific performance? What are the required enabling physical attributes, psychological attributes, intellectual attributes, and personal values necessary for peak performance? Next, Management Leadership Area Performance L4, Results Measurement Planning and Management. This is relevant to you if you are involved in establishing meaningful metrics, measures, and measurement mechanisms for gathering, manipulating, and reporting data and information to all stakeholders regarding business results. The Results Measurement Planning and Management Area of Performance involves developing a plan for implementing and updating a results measurement balanced scorecard-like system. The intent is to put into place a system of gathering data, manipulations of that data, and reporting it out to allow for monitoring of the performance of the unit and troubleshooting any problems that are discerned. Typical outputs include results measurement planning and management reports. The tasks of this area of performance related to the outputs above typically include developing a results measurement plan, reviewing the plan draft with your management and subordinates, updating the plan per the feedback received, communicating the final plan with specific messages to the appropriate groups through the appropriate channels, following the plan, monitoring it with other implementation issues, and adapting and adjusting it as necessary. Once you've defined performance competence as the task capability to produce outputs to stakeholder requirements, you can systematically derive the specific, and not generic, enabling competencies and attributes required for your situation. What are the compliance, marketplace, enterprise, business, interpersonal, and professional and technical knowledge and skills required for your situation? And what are the required enabling physical attributes, psychological attributes, intellectual attributes, and personal values required for peak performance? Next, Management Leadership Area of Performance L5, Process Improvement Planning and Management. This is relevant to you if you are involved in systematically improving internal processes for return on investment benefits and for achieving the annual operational and long-term strategic plan goals regarding improvement. The Process Improvement Planning and Management Area of Performance involves developing plans for improving internal processes where the potential forecasted return on investment exceeds the internal hurdle rates expected by the enterprise, consistent with the goals of achieving the annual operation plan objectives and the long-term strategic goals and objectives. Typical outputs include a process improvement plan. Typical tasks include developing a process improvement plan draft, reviewing that draft with your management and subordinates and customers and stakeholders, updating the process improvement plan per the feedback received, communicating the final process improvement plan specifics with groups through the appropriate channels, following the process improvement plan, monitoring implementation and success failures, and updating the process improvement plan as necessary. Once you have defined performance competence here as the task capability to produce outputs to stakeholder requirements, you can systematically derive the specific, and not generic, enabling competencies and attributes. What are the compliance, marketplace, enterprise, business, interpersonal, and professional and technical knowledge and skills required for your specific situation? And what are the required enabling physical attributes, psychological attributes, intellectual attributes, and personal values required for peak performance? Next, Management Leadership Area of Performance L6, Communications Planning and Management. This is relevant to you if you are involved in assessing target audiences and their communications needs, then planning and managing all one-way and two-way communications, both proactive and reactive, and both internal and external. The Communications Planning and Management Area of Performance involves developing a plan for communications to all stakeholders. The intent is to put into place a system of routine and non-routine communications to meet their needs. The typical outputs include a communications plan. The typical tasks involve developing a draft plan, reviewing it with management, subordinates, customers, and stakeholders, updating the communications plan per the feedback received, communicating the final plan's specifics with specific groups through the appropriate channels, and following the communications plan, monitoring implementation and successes and failures, and making adjustments and updating the communications plan as necessary. Once you define performance competence here as the task capability to produce outputs to stakeholder requirements, you can systematically derive the specifics, and not generic, enabling competencies and attributes required for peak performance. What are the compliance, marketplace, enterprise, business, interpersonal, and professional technical knowledge and skills required for your specific situation? What are the required enabling physical attributes, psychological attributes, intellectual attributes, and personal values required for peak performance? That's it, a podcast nutshell, if you will. Management Area of Performance is a flexible workbook to guide your identification of the specific, not generic, performance competencies and have you systematically and systemically define the enabling competencies and attributes that are really required by the specifics of your current and/or future enterprise process performance requirements. The Management Area Performance Workbook is available as a free PDF file on my website at www.eppic.biz. And you can reach me, Guy Wallace, via the website as well. Thank you for listening and for pursuing performance. Achieve peak performance to protect and improve the enterprise. Have a great day.